Have you ever felt like you're slowly drifting apart from the person you once loved deeply? Why does it seem like, after all these years, the bond that once felt unbreakable begins to fade? What causes this emotional distance in long-term marriages, and can it ever be repaired? In this powerful story, we'll dive deep into the emotional complexities many older women face in their marriages, uncovering the hidden reasons behind this growing resentment. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why long-lasting love can sometimes transform into frustration and isolation. We'll explore the role of family responsibilities, changing expectations, and how years of cohabitation lead to unnoticed emotional neglect. We'll also share real solutions that could help rekindle the connection between you and your partner. Solutions that don't involve drastic measures like divorce. You'll hear how open communication and mutual understanding can bring about change and heal long-standing wounds. By the end, you'll be armed with the insights and tools to recognize the signs of emotional distancing in your relationship and take action before it's too late. So, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the valuable lessons that could change the course of your relationship for the better. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Part 1. The story of Anna. The reasons behind Anna's growing dissatisfaction are, in many ways, unexpectedly practical. Anna, at 63 years old, has been married to her husband, Juan, for 40 long years. They shared a beautiful bond in their youth, full of love and mutual respect. But as Anna crossed the threshold of her 60th birthday, something changed. The man she once adored and cherished has slowly morphed into someone who no longer feels like the partner she once knew. Now, every day feels like an emotional battle, and Anna finds herself retreating inward, overwhelmed by a deep resentment she can no longer ignore. Anna's love for Juan was once unconditional. In their younger years, his imperfections were easier to overlook, buried beneath the warmth of their shared memories and experiences. Even as time passed and Juan's habits became more grating, Anna's affection for him held strong. She would tolerate his rough edges and compensate for his shortcomings. But after turning 60, things started to shift. His quirks that once seemed manageable now felt like unbearable irritants. His presence, once a source of comfort, now only served to trigger feelings of frustration and bitterness. She didn't even want him near her. It's heartbreaking to realize that the man she once adored has become someone she barely recognizes, and that recognition is painful. Anna often wonders what happened to the love she once felt. She cannot comprehend why just looking at him now fills her with an overwhelming sense of anger. At times, she feels as though she could burst into tears, consumed by a deep sense of emotional fatigue that seeps into every corner of her life. She used to find comfort in their shared moments, but now, every interaction with him feels like an exhausting emotional labor. The toll it has taken on her mental health has been immense, pushing her into a constant state of irritability, which eventually led her to struggle with depression. Medication became a temporary escape, but it couldn't fix the underlying sadness that had slowly enveloped her. It's as if her spirit has been crushed under the weight of years of unspoken resentment, and she yearns for a way out. If Anna could be free, she would leave everything behind, her home, her assets, everything that once bound her to Juan, and start anew. She fantasizes about a fresh beginning, one where she can live alone, in peace, without the constant irritations of a life she no longer wants. But the reality of being over 60 and facing a divorce is far more complicated than she ever imagined. It's not just the fear of facing her friends and family, but the burden of carrying the weight of societal judgment. She fears that a scandalous divorce would make her the subject of cruel gossip, something she would never want to endure at this stage in her life. The thought of becoming the neighborhood's punchline terrifies her, so she silently suppresses her desire to leave. Her children, all successful in their careers, are another source of anxiety for Anna. She worries that a divorce would disrupt their lives in ways she can't even begin to fathom. What if it affected their standing in the community or harmed their professional relationships? Her maternal instinct tells her to protect them from any shame or embarrassment, so she remains silent. Despite the immense weight of her unhappiness, she finds herself unable to speak the words that could free her. The very thought of telling Juan that she wants out of their marriage feels impossible, like an insurmountable obstacle. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Anna often reflects on why she feels such intense resentment toward him. She can't pinpoint when it started or why it's grown so strong, but it eats away at her with every passing day. Even the sight of him at the dinner table makes her lose her appetite, a feeling so foreign to her that it feels almost unnatural. Juan has always been a rough, no-nonsense man. From their earliest days together, he was never one to understand the intricacies of running a household. He would hand over his paycheck to Anna each week, trusting her to manage their finances, but never lifting a finger to help with the daily tasks. Over time, this imbalance became more evident. Anna found herself juggling not only the household chores but also the responsibility of caring for their growing family. When their children had children of their own, Anna stepped in with love and selflessness to care for her grandchildren. She could see how hard her children were working and how little time they had to balance their jobs with the demands of parenthood. With a heart full of empathy, Anna took on the responsibility of raising her grandchildren. It was a decision she made out of love for her family, but now, years later, it feels like a burden she can no longer bear. Her role as the caregiver, the unsung hero, has come at the cost of her well-being. The love she once gave so freely now feels like it has drained her, and Juan, who once stood beside her as a partner, is now an unwelcome presence in her life, a source of daily frustration rather than comfort. Every day, Anna asks herself if it's too late to reclaim her happiness. She wonders if there is still time to make a change, to live for herself, without the suffocating weight of a marriage that no longer brings her joy. But with each passing day, she feels the years slipping away, and the hope of a fresh start seems to fade just a little more. Living under the same roof, yet feeling completely alone, that's how Anna felt. Despite being married to Juan for years, he was a ghost in their home, completely indifferent to the demands of daily life. Anna, on the other hand, was drowning in responsibilities. She cooked every meal, cleaned every corner, cared for the grandchildren, and still managed to look after herself, all while never once being given a moment to breathe. It seemed as though her life was a constant whirlwind of work, never stopping, never resting. Every time the weight of it all became too much, Anna would look to Juan, hoping for a flicker of understanding, a simple offer to help. But there was nothing. There he was, sprawled out on the couch, glued to his phone, completely detached from everything around him. He lived a carefree, almost selfish existence, eating, sleeping, and doing absolutely nothing to help the woman who had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Anna's patience was running thin, and every day the frustration built. The resentment grew, and eventually, she couldn't keep it inside any longer. She snapped, confronting Juan, accusing him of being utterly selfish. How could he be so blind to her exhaustion? She had pleaded with him countless times, hoping he would see the strain in her eyes, but it seemed like he couldn't care less. Instead of taking responsibility for his laziness, Juan dared to criticize her. He blamed her for the situation they were in, telling her that she had created this problem herself by taking on the responsibility of raising the grandchildren. His words hit Anna like a slap in the face. Did he think it was her fault? Did he truly believe that she had asked for this? His words were nothing but a coward's attempt to deflect from his shortcomings. Anna was filled with a rage so deep that, at that moment, she wanted to kick him out of the house, to wash her hands of him entirely. But what hurt the most was the stark realization that after everything she had done for him, after sacrificing her peace and happiness to care for their family, he would just continue to be useless, leaving her to shoulder all the responsibilities on her own. He hadn't even lifted a finger when their grandchildren, once small and needy, had finally grown old enough to go to school and no longer needed her constant care. And still, Juan's apathy remained. It was only after the storm of responsibility had passed when Anna was finally free. Free to live, free to travel, free to reward herself for all those years of hard work, that Juan's health took a sudden turn for the worse. It was as if life had waited for her to find herself again before throwing this new curveball at her. He was hospitalized, and it was his own choices, his stubborn addiction to smoking, that had brought him to this point. Anna had tried to warn him, time and time again. She had begged him to consider his health, to cut back on the cigarettes, to stop inhaling that toxic smoke into his lungs. She had even urged him to spend a little more money on better quality cigarettes. But Juan wasn't willing to listen. To him, it didn't matter that his health was spiraling. He was more concerned about saving a few pennies on cheap, low-quality cigarettes than he was about the damage he was doing to his body. It was maddening. He smoked a pack a day, sometimes more, and never once thought about the toll it was taking on his health. Every night, Anna could hear him coughing violently, the sound so intense it would rattle the walls. The coughing wasn't just a nuisance, it was a sign of something much worse. She would sit up in bed, her heart sinking with fear, each time he gasped for breath. And then, one night, it happened. His coughing fit was unlike anything they'd ever experienced. He couldn't breathe. His face turned a shade of crimson, and the veins on his forehead bulged like they were about to burst. At that moment, Anna knew that something was seriously wrong. Her heart raced, panic setting in. She had no choice but to call an ambulance, praying that it wasn't too late. After an extensive and heartbreaking examination, the doctor delivered the devastating news. Juan was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a severe condition that would only worsen without immediate intervention. He urgently needed to be hospitalized, and the doctor did not mince words, repeatedly imploring him to quit smoking. The gravity of the situation was clear. If Juan refused to listen, he was walking a dangerous path, one that would inevitably lead to his untimely death. The doctor's words echoed in the room, as though trying to break through the thick cloud of stubbornness that surrounded Juan. For a fleeting moment, he seemed to acknowledge the truth, nodding in agreement, promising to quit smoking. But as soon as the doctor left, his resolve shattered. Juan found ways to deceive even himself. He hid his cigarettes, sneaking off to the corner convenience store to buy more, retreating to a lonely stall where he could continue to feed his addiction in secret. Anna, with a heavy heart, tried to make sense of it all. How could Juan disregard his health so carelessly, especially now, when they were both past 60? She scolded him harshly, not out of anger, but out of sheer desperation. She begged him to see reason, to understand that life wasn't just about living. It was about living well, and for the sake of their future, he had to change. But Juan's response was bitter, almost detached, as if he had already given up on life itself. He calmly told her that he had lived long enough, so what was the point of continuing without his cigarettes? For him, life was not worth living without that small comfort, that little vice. He made it clear that he would rather die than give up the only thing that still brought him some semblance of joy. It was a heartbreaking admission that left Anna feeling empty and helpless. What tore her apart the most, though, was not just his selfish disregard for his well-being. It was the toll it took on her. The second-hand smoke he relentlessly puffed into the air, forcing Anna to inhale it, was not just irritating, it was dangerous. Anna had always been aware of the risks of second-hand smoke, having read countless articles about how it was even more harmful than smoking itself. Yet Juan continued to expose her to this poison, dismissing her concerns as if they were nothing. It made Anna feel both furious and heartbroken. Despite countless arguments over the years, despite all her efforts to make him understand, it had all been in vain. Juan had not changed. In their younger days, despite his heavy smoking, there was still a trace of freshness in his breath. But now, in their later years, his breath had become unbearable. The stench of tobacco lingered in the air, and every word he spoke seemed to carry that foul, acrid scent. Anna could no longer bear it. The smell was so overpowering it made her stomach turn, especially when he would talk to her about anything. She couldn't escape it. His teeth, once bright, had now become yellowed and stained, a constant reminder of the years wasted in indulgence. Even worse, he refused to take basic care of them, refusing to brush them properly. It was as if the simple act of maintaining his health no longer mattered to him. It was devastating to witness. But the toll didn't end there. His smoking and overall lack of self-care had led to another miserable consequence: his snoring. It had grown louder over the years, to the point where it could rattle the walls of their bedroom. Anna, exhausted from sleepless nights, begged him to sleep in the living room so she could at least get some rest. But Juan refused, stubbornly insisting that the master bedroom was the only place he could sleep comfortably. It was his right, in his mind, and Anna's need for rest seemed unimportant. So Anna found herself sleeping alone, on a small, uncomfortable couch, trying to escape his presence in the hopes of finding some peace. But even that was denied to her. Every time she attempted to take the blanket and retreat to the living room, Juan would stop her, his complaints filling the air. He could not bear the thought of his wife not being with him in their bed, as though he could not comprehend the emotional and physical strain he was putting her through. And if Anna insisted on going, their arguments became explosive, loud and furious, disturbing the peace of the entire neighborhood. Each fight left Anna feeling more alone, more helpless, and more resentful. Her heart ached as she realized that she was trapped in a marriage where the person she loved was slipping away, not just physically, but emotionally as well. She was drowning in his selfishness, suffocated by his refusal to change, and yet she couldn't escape, because she still loved him, even if he didn't love himself. Anna's life has become a continuous struggle. Every night, she lies awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with insomnia. Her body craves rest, but the peace she so desperately needs is always just out of reach. As the hours tick by, she feels the exhaustion weigh her down more and more, knowing that sleep will only come during the daylight hours, when the world is up and moving, and her life feels even more isolated. This unnatural, jarring cycle of day and night has taken a severe toll on her health. Each passing day feels like an uphill battle, and every night she faces the same torment. It's not just the lack of sleep that gnaws at her, it's the emotional and physical strain that grows heavier with each passing moment. The resentment she once pushed aside now seeps into every corner of her heart. Every tiny discomfort she feels is amplified, and it all comes back to him. The man she once loved seems like a distant memory, a stranger, someone she can't bear to share her life with anymore. Juan, her husband, is a shadow of the man he used to be. In his younger days, though sometimes lazy about certain things, he still managed to maintain some semblance of decency. But now, with age creeping in, it's as though he has given up entirely. He reeks of something unpleasant, something beyond just the smell of sweat or neglect. It's the smell of decay, of surrendering to time. Anna can't escape it. She can't even look at him without feeling repulsed. His disregard for personal hygiene has become unbearable. She has asked him, no, begged him, repeatedly to take care of himself, to bathe, to at least brush his teeth. But it's as if her words fall on deaf ears. He ignores her pleas, and in doing so, he ignores her feelings and her dignity. He doesn't care that his body is now a prison, trapping both of them in a stinking, suffocating atmosphere of indifference. The lack of hygiene has become a metaphor for the neglect she feels in their relationship. Anna vents her frustration to anyone who will listen, seeking solace in the hope that anyone, will understand the pain she's enduring. She shares her burdens, and for a fleeting moment, the weight lifts, but it always returns, heavier and more oppressive than before. Anna's heart aches as she remembers the younger version of herself, the woman who dreamed of growing old alongside Juan, their love enduring until their hair turned gray. She had imagined a future full of shared memories, comfort, and love. But now, every day with him feels like a suffocating trap, an unbearable weight. She no longer wants to see his face, no longer wants to hear his voice. What happened to the man she once adored? Where did that version of Juan go? Ana isn't sure if the blame lies with her or with him, or if it's just a result of the relentless passage of time. But one thing is clear: her life has become a living nightmare. Each day is a form of mental and emotional torture. She feels as though she's been shackled to a life she didn't choose, surrounded by despair and disillusionment. Her dreams of a loving partnership have crumbled, leaving behind only ashes of regret. She feels trapped in a cycle of emotional exhaustion, longing for a way out that doesn't seem to exist. Her story, as heart-wrenching as it is not unique. It speaks to a truth many women face, that over time, relationships change in ways that are hard to predict, especially as the years roll by. The truth is that after years of cohabitation, the cracks in the foundation of a marriage begin to widen. People change, both in their minds and in their habits, and sometimes that change creates a chasm that feels impossible to cross. The emotional distance grows, and what was once a passionate love can feel more like an obligation. The very things that once brought comfort and joy now seem like burdens too heavy to bear. So the question looms: why do women, after years of marriage, start to feel suffocated by the man they once adored? Why do older women find themselves so weary of their husbands? The answers may lie in the subtle, often painful shifts that happen over the years. Changes that, when ignored or unaddressed, can erode the love and connection that once seemed unbreakable. One of the most heart-wrenching and common reasons behind the unraveling of relationships in older age is the glaring inequality in the distribution of family responsibilities. In their youth, wives often put aside their own needs and desires, enduring and forgiving their husbands' bad habits in the name of love or out of a deep sense of responsibility toward their children. They sacrificed so much: love, time, energy, all while managing the daily struggles of running a household. But as the years pass and the toll of age begins to take its course on their health, things change. The physical exhaustion becomes harder to ignore, and the overwhelming pressure to care for grandchildren begins to mount. The balance they once had, where love and duty seemed to hold everything together, now feels like a weight too heavy to bear alone. It becomes almost unbearable when they see their husbands continue to live carefree lives, indifferent to the growing burden their wives are shouldering. The lack of partnership, the absence of shared responsibility, the painful realization that they are alone in their commitment to the family. This accumulates over time, feeding a deep sense of discontent and exhaustion. How much can one person endure? How much love can one person give before feeling drained, forgotten, and unseen? As women grow older, they often become more attuned to their inner world, becoming more self-aware and conscious of what truly matters in life. No longer trapped in the endless cycle of work and childcare, they are gifted with more time to reflect on the sacrifices they have made over the years. Sacrifices that were once made out of love, but now feel like they have been taken for granted. As their health begins to decline, they may feel the weight of all the years spent caring for others, often at the expense of their own needs. In these quieter moments of reflection, they begin to see their husbands in a new light. They notice the flaws that they had overlooked for so long, buried under layers of love, duty, and the hustle of life. The love they once had seems less magical and less fulfilling when viewed through the lens of unmet needs, unshared responsibilities, and growing resentment. This change isn't a sign that love has simply faded. Rather, it marks a deep and painful realization that what once seemed like the center of their lives, the relationship, is no longer the nourishing, supportive bond it once was. It's a hard, sobering awakening to what truly matters and what has been lost along the way. Now, the question looms: should Ana, or any woman in her position, consider divorce? Divorce is never an easy answer, especially for those in later years, where the stakes feel higher and the risks more daunting. For someone like Ana, who has spent decades in the bonds of marriage, divorce is more than just a simple end to a relationship. It is a profound, life-altering decision that brings with it a cascade of fears. Fear of loneliness, fear of being seen as a failure, fear of damaging the family's reputation, and perhaps the most painful of all, the concern about how it will affect the children and the broader community. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, Please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The social pressure to stay in a marriage, even one that has long since lost its spark, is real, and it weighs heavily on those considering such a drastic step. The question, should I divorce, becomes a battleground between the right to personal happiness and the weight of social responsibilities, a battle that not only asks what is best for the individual but also what the individual owes to others. Divorce, in many ways, could represent a final escape from years of suffering, a chance to reclaim peace, autonomy, and spiritual freedom. But before taking such a step, it's vital to pause and ask, does divorce really solve the root of the problem? Could it be that the discontent arises from a deeper sense of abandonment, a lack of emotional understanding, or a painful disconnection that has slowly but surely eroded the relationship? These are complex issues that cannot be solved by ending the marriage. It's possible that a deeper, more meaningful conversation, an open, honest exchange of feelings, might offer a path to healing. Could both partners, with effort and emotional maturity, restore the balance they once had? Could they rediscover the love that seemed lost but may still be buried beneath years of unmet needs and frustrations? While divorce may seem like a solution, it should not be the first resort. Before considering the end, there must be an earnest effort to reconnect, to communicate, and to rebuild. Only then can one know if the marriage is truly beyond repair, or if it is simply waiting to be revived with the right effort, honesty, and love. Preserving family happiness is not something that comes automatically. It is an ongoing process that demands intentional effort, deep understanding, and mutual commitment. The truth is, family happiness is fragile, and maintaining it, especially in the later years, requires patience, compassion, and, above all, a willingness to embrace change. This journey is a shared responsibility, and both partners must be willing to meet each other halfway, understanding that joy in marriage doesn't simply happen but is something you must work towards every single day. The first step to preserving this precious happiness is acknowledging that change is inevitable. We all age, our bodies grow older, and our personal selves evolve. This transformation can be daunting, and at times, it can feel overwhelming. However, it's in accepting these changes, both the physical and emotional, that we begin to find peace. There's an undeniable beauty in recognizing that we are no longer who we once were, but that we can still grow, learn, and love in different ways. With that understanding comes the necessity of forgiveness, of ourselves and our partners. If you want to continue building a joyful life together, you must let go of unrealistic expectations of how things should be, especially those from a time when you were younger, healthier, and full of energy. The reality of aging demands a shift in perspective. Instead of longing for those youthful days, both partners must learn to see each other with fresh eyes. Each person carries their own struggles, fears, and insecurities that may not have existed before. Embracing these changes means embracing each other with empathy and love, even when things aren't as they once were. In the face of aging, communication becomes the bedrock upon which the relationship is built. It's heartbreaking to see so many couples who, after years together, lose the ability to truly talk to one another. It's not about talking every day or filling the silence, but rather about nurturing meaningful conversations. Often, it's these simple, sincere talks, where both partners feel heard and understood, that reignite the connection they once shared. These conversations provide an invaluable opportunity to express buried emotions, share concerns, and even vent frustrations. It is through this openness that the bond can grow stronger, even in later years. Moreover, it's essential for couples to spend quality time together, to share in experiences that bring them joy and deepen their connection. In the earlier years of life, responsibilities like raising children and managing a household often consume all of one's energy, leaving little room for the relationship itself. However, when the children are grown and the day-to-day demands lighten, this can be the perfect opportunity to rediscover each other. Take time to do the things you've put off for years, whether that's traveling to new places, picking up a hobby together, or simply enjoying a quiet evening at home. These moments are the ones that create lasting memories and remind us that love doesn't just survive but thrives when nurtured with time, attention, and care. Finally, To truly preserve family happiness, we must accept that no marriage is perfect. The idea that relationships should be without conflict is a myth. In fact, the very act of overcoming challenges, together, is what can make a bond even stronger. There will be moments of anger, disappointment, and pain, but the key is not to avoid these conflicts, but to approach them with grace, understanding, and a willingness to heal together. Many older women, after decades of marriage, find themselves resenting their partners, feeling unappreciated or neglected. But this doesn't have to mark the end of the relationship. Divorce should not be the automatic solution when things get tough. Sometimes, love is not a roaring fire but a flickering flame that needs a little kindling to come back to life. With patience and mutual effort, that glow can be restored, stronger than ever. Take Anne and John, for example. Married for over 40 years, they've weathered the ups and downs of life, from the joyous moments to the difficult times. They built their relationship on a foundation of love, hope, and mutual care. But as their children grew up and moved out, they found themselves facing a new reality. John became more involved in his personal hobbies, while Anne, feeling lonely and disconnected, struggled with the changes. For a while, she felt abandoned, as if the connection they once shared had faded into the background. But this is not the end of their story. They learned, through their own challenges, that love requires ongoing attention. They began to communicate more openly, share their feelings, and find ways to reconnect. Their relationship, like many others, needed to be rebuilt, not because the love had disappeared, but because they both had to rediscover it in a new way. In the end, preserving family happiness is about more than just avoiding conflict or keeping things the way they once were. It's about embracing change, nurturing communication, and recognizing that love isn't static. It evolves, deepens, and transforms. If you're willing to put in the effort, and if both partners remain committed to growth and understanding, family happiness can flourish even in the later years of life. It's a journey worth taking, together. In the early years of their relationship, Anne and John shared a love so pure and vibrant that it felt like it could conquer anything. Their connection was instant, sparks flying the moment they met at a school dance. And, with her gentle and nurturing nature, and John, a determined and ambitious engineer, seemed like they were made for each other. Anne's dream was to become a teacher, and John's drive to build a successful career as an engineer consumed his every thought. Together, they dreamed big, their love as boundless as their ambitions. Their marriage began with so much hope, joy, and anticipation. They created a beautiful home together, a sanctuary where their 2 children would grow up, filled with warmth, laughter, and love. John worked tirelessly, pouring his heart and soul into providing for his family, while Anne, with grace and devotion, decided to put her career on hold to raise their children. There was beauty in these years, watching their children grow, learning to be their parents' greatest treasures. The family vacations, the late-night talks, the shared laughter around the dinner table. These were the moments that Anne cherished deeply. But as time marched on and their children began to spread their wings, the home that had once been a lively hub of love and activity became eerily silent. Jack, their oldest son, left for college, and their daughter Emily moved to another city for work. The once vibrant house, filled with the chatter and energy of their children, became empty. The silence was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of purpose. The quietness of the house echoed in Anne's heart, and the loneliness crept in like an unwanted guest. John, though, seemed to remain the same, focused on his work, always planning for the future. But now, in this new chapter of their lives, John was different. After retiring, he found a new passion in gardening, a hobby that consumed him. The flowers, the plants, the garden became his new world. His joy in tending to the garden was undeniable, and he felt at peace in the tranquility of the blooms. But to Anne, it felt as though John had found solace in something outside of their marriage. While he nurtured his plants with the utmost care, he seemed to forget the woman who had been by his side for so long, the woman who had given up her career and dreams to support him and their family. The house they had built together, the home that was once a symbol of their shared life, now felt more like a cage to Anne. She was no longer the center of John's attention. He spent all his time in the garden, leaving her feeling invisible, forgotten. She tried to reach out to him, desperately seeking his attention and companionship. At first, she asked for small things. Could he help with a faucet? Maybe take a walk together? But John, distracted by his blooming flowers, would agree to help and then forget. His mind was elsewhere, and Anne felt her heart grow heavier with every passing day. She didn't want to complain, didn't want to start arguments. But the resentment built quietly inside her, like a slow-burning fire. Anne's attempts to bring some warmth back into their marriage were met with indifference. She decided to cook a special dinner one evening, hoping that the gesture would reignite the bond they once had. She prepared John's favorite dishes, hoping it would show him that she still cared, that she wanted to feel connected. But when John came home, he barely acknowledged the meal. He glanced at the table, then, without a word, returned to his garden, and sat there alone, her heart sinking as she realized that her efforts had been in vain. The table, set for two, now felt like a cruel reminder of what was missing. She said nothing. She sat quietly, waiting for him to come back, for him to notice her. But the silence only deepened. The feelings of abandonment she had tried to suppress for so long now flooded her heart. She had given so much of herself to this marriage, to their family, and now she felt as though she was losing everything. Her love for John, once so full and strong, was now tinged with sadness, frustration, and a growing bitterness that she didn't know how to express. She wanted to scream, to cry, to make him understand how much she needed him. But she stayed silent, silently enduring her pain, because after all these years, what else could she do? Once, when Anne found herself seriously ill, exhausted beyond measure, and confined to her bed, she longed for the care and comfort of her husband, John. But tragically, he didn't even seem to notice her suffering. While Anne lay there, drained by pain and weakness, John continued with his everyday routine as if nothing had changed. He rose early in the morning to tend to the garden, and only intermittently did he enter the house, always rushing past her to grab something to drink or to take a brief break. It wasn't until the night, when the world had already settled into stillness, that Anne's fragile voice barely broke the silence, asking, "Did you realize I've been sick all day?" John, visibly shocked by her question, responded without the tenderness and so desperately needed. "Oh, why didn't you tell me earlier?" he said, his words cold and unfeeling as he proceeded to prepare for bed. At that moment, Anne felt as though the weight of the world had crashed down on her. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the crushing emotional weight of his indifference. It was as though her husband, the person she had once shared so much love and connection with, had become a stranger, incapable of recognizing her pain or offering her a shred of comfort. Her heart broke in ways she didn't even know were possible, and in that moment, Anne felt utterly invisible, as if her feelings, her needs, and her very existence had no place in John's world anymore. As time went by, Anne began to feel as if she were living in a marriage that had slowly, painfully disintegrated into something hollow and disconnected. John, once her partner in every sense of the word, had transformed into someone who barely acknowledged her presence. Though they continued to share a roof, it felt as if they were strangers living parallel lives. There was no communication, no emotional connection, just a quiet, growing void between them. And, overwhelmed by the isolation, started to realize that if something didn't change, if she didn't make a shift in her life, she would be swallowed whole by the sadness and loneliness that now consumed her. She couldn't bear the thought of existing in this emotional wilderness forever. Then, one day, during a walk in the park, a rare moment when she allowed herself to step outside her shell, and stumbled upon a group of women gathered under the shade of trees, painting. They were part of a local art club, and to Anne's surprise, they welcomed her warmly, inviting her to join them. At first, she hesitated. It had been so long since she had picked up a paintbrush, and the thought of being vulnerable, of starting something new, filled her with uncertainty. But something deep within her stirred, a longing for something more, something that could break the numbness she had been feeling for so long. As she began to paint, and realized that through each stroke, she could finally give voice to the emotions that had been bottled up inside her for so long. The colors, the brushstrokes, the movement, they allowed her to release the pain, the frustration, and the heartbreak that had silently haunted her. The painting sessions became Anne's sanctuary, a place where she could reclaim a part of herself that had been lost. Each evening, after class, she returned home with a renewed sense of peace and purpose, her heart lighter, her spirit brighter. But John, consumed by his own world and his beloved garden, remained blissfully unaware of the transformation taking place within his wife. He never asked about her art, never took the time to share in the joy she had found, and began to feel like she was living two separate lives. One in her marriage, where she was ignored and unseen, and another in the art world, where she felt free and alive. But no matter how much her heart soared in the creative space, it was clear that the void between her and John was only growing wider. Anne knew she had to make a choice. Could she continue to live in a marriage where she was invisible, unacknowledged, and alone, or could she forge a new path for herself, one filled with creativity, joy, and emotional fulfillment, even if that meant standing alone? 4 months, and had been silently struggling, feeling neglected and invisible in her marriage. The emotional weight had built up, and one night, she finally reached her breaking point. With a heart heavy with unspoken words, she decided it was time to confront John. They sat down together at the dining table, the weight of their distance lingering in the air. And, her voice trembling with emotion, finally spoke what had been aching in her soul. "Do you realize that we are distancing ourselves?" she asked, her eyes searching his face for any hint of understanding. John was taken aback, completely caught off guard by the raw honesty in Anne's words. He hadn't fully grasped the depth of her feelings until that very moment. But, as he looked into her eyes, he saw the pain she had been carrying all this time, and it shattered him, and poured out her heart, recounting the countless times she had asked for his help around the house, only to have him forget because he was so consumed with his plants. The frustration of feeling like an afterthought in his life, the helplessness of being sick while John remained oblivious, it all came rushing out. She felt utterly abandoned in a marriage that she had once cherished, and her words were soaked in a mixture of sorrow and longing. As Anne spoke, John sat there, listening with a growing sense of guilt. He had never realized the impact of his seemingly small actions, his distractions, his indifference. He had been so wrapped up in his own world that he hadn't noticed how Anne was slowly slipping away, how her spirit was being crushed by the weight of neglect. The guilt gnawed at him, knowing that the woman he loved had felt so alone in their shared life. He had failed her in the most profound way. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking with regret. "I didn't realize you felt so lonely. I've been selfish, and I can see now how much that hurt you." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. That conversation marked a turning point. Something deep within John shifted. He could no longer ignore the quiet cries of his wife's heart. He began to pay more attention, not just to her words, but to her needs. He listened to her, truly listened, and started to understand her in ways he had never done before. And, perhaps most surprisingly, he took part in something she loved, Anne's painting class. John had no talent for art, but he joined not because he was drawn to the brushstrokes or the colors, but because he wanted to be part of Anne's world. He wanted to show her that he valued her passion, that he saw her, truly saw her, and he was willing to make the effort, no matter how clumsy his attempts at painting might have been. Their painting sessions became an unexpected joy, not because of the art itself, but because of the time they spent together, creating something meaningful and real. Through each brushstroke, they began to reconnect, rediscovering the bond that had once seemed lost. But John didn't stop there. He remembered the little things that had once made their relationship special, like the picnics they used to have when they were younger. With a new sense of purpose, He started organizing small outings on weekends. They explored new parks, visited quaint towns, and discovered hidden restaurants, reigniting the spark of adventure that had once defined their shared experiences. It was in these moments, in the simplicity of nature and new experiences, that Anne began to feel her heart heal. The loneliness that had once clouded Anne's life began to lift. Slowly, she realized that perhaps, just perhaps, the key to reconnecting with her husband was to stop waiting for him to change on his own. Sometimes, the change had to come from her first. She had to open up, speak her truth, and invite him back into her world. It was a humbling realization, but it filled her with a sense of empowerment that she hadn't felt in years. John, too, had learned something profound. He had learned that marriage wasn't just about sharing a roof, it was about truly being present for each other, about caring for the other's heart and soul. His actions, small as they may have seemed, had the power to build or break his relationship. He learned to respect and cherish Anne's feelings, something he had once taken for granted. And in John's story is a powerful reminder of the strength of communication, the beauty of vulnerability, and the importance of never giving up on love, even when it seems like it's fading. After over 40 years together, they didn't overcome their challenges by running from them. Instead, they faced them head-on, choosing to change, to grow together, and to rediscover each other in the process. Through patience, love, and understanding, they found their way back to the joy they had almost lost. And in doing so, they proved that love doesn't fade away with time. It can grow deeper, stronger, and more beautiful if both people are willing to put in the effort. Even in their later years, Anne and John rediscovered a love that was vibrant and alive, a testament to the power of a shared life, built not on perfection, but on the willingness to adapt, forgive, and keep choosing each other every single day. As we wrap up Anne and John's beautiful journey, it's clear that love and connection don't just happen on their own. They take effort, understanding, and a willingness to change. So, what have you learned from their story? Is there something in their relationship that resonated with you? Something that you can bring into your own life to strengthen the bonds with the ones you love? We'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one thing you've learned and how you plan to put it into practice. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories like this. Thank you for watching.